Hello, just over 40 years ago, Ken Russell made a film on Elgar for the BBC arts programme Monitor, which was where we met. It was considered at the time, and still is by many critics, to be the finest arts film ever made for British television. Since then, he's directed feature films of varying quality and success, and made several television films for the South Bank show. His reputation has zoomed and flagged, but is now an established star on the film festival circuit. I wanted to commission him to make a film to mark our 25th season, and he decided to revisit Elgar. It's back to Ken's earliest filming days, surprising, a bit naive, gently pointing out Elgar's interest in women other than his wife, and his eccentricities, both of which were underplayed 40 years ago. Here it is then. I asked him to deliver his own commentary. Russell rides again.
The music of Edward Elgar will forever be associated with England and the Malvern Hills which inspired him. But it seemed nobody was interested in the work of a young provincial composer at the end of Queen Victoria's reign. Self-taught and son of a humble shopkeeper in Worcester, he had no social airs or graces to help his career, and the fact he was a Catholic didn't help matters either. So Elgar was forced to eke out a living, peddling his services as a violin teacher, also available to play in local bands. As he cycled about his business, the perspective from the Malvern Heights stirred him to reach inside himself for the music he heard on the wind, like the tunes he heard as a boy and jotted down for a kid's band who played it. Eventually he transposed them as the Wand of Youth Suite for full symphony orchestra. Here's a movement called Fairies and Giants. But he was grown up now, and just an impoverished musician with big dreams, teaching amateurs. Among his many female pupils, one might almost call them admirers, was the aristocratic daughter of Major General Roberts, late of the Indian Army. An intelligent woman of many interests, Alice, like Elgar, was a dreamer. While he imagined his music being played throughout the land, she envisioned her novels becoming famous, a dream she would sacrifice to further Elgar's ambitions. And happy she was to do so, for at age 38 in Victorian society, she might have ended up an old maid, save for the younger Elgar's proposal. As soon as her mother died, she married him and set about encouraging his music. The marriage scandalized her family, who thought it beneath her, and promptly cut her off without a penny. For an engagement present, Elgar wrote a little trifle for her that was to become one of his greatest hits, Salut d'amour, for which his publisher paid him the princely sum of £5, which helped finance their honeymoon on the Isle of Wight. They had an idyllic time, and Alice poured out the love she felt for her man and his music in lyrics she wrote for his song cycle Sea Pictures, one of several collaborations. Back in Malvern, after dismally failing to take London by storm, and with baby daughter Caris to support, the Elgars struggled on. Alice sold her jewellery and encouraged Edward to keep writing, while she ruled the lines for his scores and walked several miles in rain or shine to post the finished works off to the publishers. He composed late into the night, despite constraints of earning a crust as a jobbing musician. Their love for each other and the ever-present Malvern Hills sustaining them. And as the years went by, their tenacity paid off. Elgar began to make a name for himself among the many choral societies that were such a feature of Queen Victoria's reign. Alice also encouraged him to take an interest in activities not usually associated with a piano tuner's son, in the hopes of some social advancement. We've known the hills are alive with the sound of music long before we heard it from the lips of Julie Andrews. Composers like Grieg, Novak, Delius and Dandy had already been there and cast their spell. And that same sense of magic was whistling around the Malvern Hills long before Elgar introduced it to Caris over a century ago. It still pulses there to this day, and hopefully always will. But it's not only aspects of nature that live in the music of Elgar. Portraits of friends saturate his Enigma variations, including that of a very attractive fan called Dora Bella, who would often cycle over 40 miles just to visit him. Like Elgar, she was a keen Wolverhampton Wanderers supporter, and they often went to matches together. She also had a charming stammer, which Elgar captured so brilliantly in his music. Another close acquaintance of Elgar's was a dog called Dan, whose antics he was forever jotting down in a musical notebook. Here he is immortalised in the 11th variation of the Enigma. Never divulged the identity of Variation 13, but recent research suggests a girl named Helen Weaver, who rejected his pre-Alice proposal of marriage, possibly on religious grounds. He was a Catholic, remember. Or was it because of a fatal illness that she finally chose to sail out of his life? But why were these 14 wonderful character studies christened the Enigma? Why, simply because Elgar never divulged the theme on which they were based. He loved a good mystery. But once when a very close friend and schoolmistress to Caris was asked why she wasn't featured in the variations, she replied, "I am the theme." Her name was Rosa Burley, and she wrote a book on Elgar, revealing intimate insights into the composer's mind, as well as hopes of marriage. Elgar's playful nature also extended to his male friends. Even the serious-minded August Jaeger, who worked for his publisher, never quite knew what to expect from him, even where such a lofty topic as Beethoven was concerned. The violin was Elgar's favourite instrument, so when he wrote on the title page of his violin concerto, "Here is enshrined the soul of ... it's clear he was evoking someone special, someone he called Windflower. Could Windflower have been the love of his life? Judge for yourselves. But what of poor Alice? Was she just an also-ran in his lineup of romantic inspirations? Not at all. She is in fact the #1 variation of the enigma, proof that he recognised her contribution to the work that was going to bring him recognition as England's greatest composer of modern times. Appropriately enough, the last variation is Elgar describing himself, or Edu, as Alice called him. Full of pomp and circumstance, it affirmed the exalted status soon to be conferred upon him. As news of his knighthood spread throughout the land, the Elgars hobnobbed with royalty and were the toast of London society. Lady Elgar was in heaven. But whenever he could get away, Sir Edward returned to the source of his inspiration, as one masterpiece followed another. His first symphony was played over 100 times during the year of its premiere, although the second was nowhere near as popular. It was out of step with the nation's arrogant, swaggering march into the new century. It was as if Elgar had detected a nightmare force about to shatter that complacent Edwardian dream forever. short while later, war was declared, and Elgar was horrified to see his Pomp and Circumstance March No. 1 turned into a recruiting song, with words of which he strongly disapproved, and as Land of Hope and Glory lured hundreds of thousands through the gates of Armageddon, Elgar withdrew to a remote country cottage and the music of lamentation. The war over, Elgar was left to mourn the death of friends and foes alike. But soon he was to suffer an even greater loss with the death of his beloved wife, Alice. Significantly, he buried his honours with her. Elgar lived for another 14 years, and apart from the cello concerto, which was virtually Alice's requiem, he wrote little of note for the rest of his days. One exception was a scrap called Mina, named after a constant companion. As for the rest, Elgar revisited people and places of the past, including his beloved River Severn, where he fished man and boy in the shadows of Worcester Cathedral, just a few streets away from his dad's music shop, where he'd picked up the basic rudiments of his craft. And Worcester Cathedral itself, scene of many triumphs, including performances of his choral masterpiece The Dream of Gerontius, a great affirmation of the faith that fascinated him throughout his life. Gerontius tells the story of the dreams and visions of an ordinary man on his deathbed about to meet his maker. We can only hope it sustained Edward Elgar himself as he drew his last breath, aged 76, after a long and painful struggle with cancer. And if you visit Elgar country today, you will almost certainly come into contact with Elgar's ghost, should the mood take you, that is. But don't worry, his spirit is benign, though I can't guarantee that his music won't haunt you for the rest of your life.